My husband, Mark, sat across from his 22-year-old mistress at a Michelin-star restaurant, ordering a $4,000 bottle of vintage wine on what he thought was his bottomless corporate credit card. For 3 years, I had worked agonizing 80-hour weeks as an ER nurse to fund his tech startup, even remortgaging my late grandmother's house to keep his dream alive. He thought I was just the clueless, exhausted wife funding his secret Playboy lifestyle. He didn't realize that because his credit was garbage, he had made me the sole legal owner of his entire fake company. As the waiter approached their table, he wasn't carrying the wine Mark ordered. He was carrying a silver platter with a declined card, a corporate termination letter for embezzlement, and a fast-tracked divorce filing. They thought they broke me. They didn't know I held the deed to their entire lives. I loved Mark with the kind of blind, unconditional devotion that makes you do incredibly stupid things. When we got married, he was full of ambition, constantly pitching the next big tech platform. But ambition doesn't pay the light bill. So, I picked up the slack. I'm an ER nurse, and for 3 grueling years, I practically lived at the hospital. I took every night shift, every holiday, and every double I could legally work just to keep a roof over our heads. Meanwhile, Mark worked out of a rented downtown office, supposedly building his empire. He was always on the verge of a massive breakthrough, but that breakthrough always required just a little more capital. First, it was our joint savings. Then, my personal retirement fund. Finally, he came to me with tears in his eyes, begging me to take out a second mortgage on the beautiful, completely paid-off home my grandmother had left me. "It's the final push, Sarah," he promised, holding my hands and looking deep into my eyes. "Once we launch, I'll retire you. You'll never have to work another night shift again." Like an absolute idiot, I signed the papers. I was chronically exhausted, running on stale break room coffee and 4 hours of sleep, which made it incredibly easy for Mark to live a double life. He became distant, constantly taking investor trips to Miami and Los Angeles. He even started criticizing my appearance, telling me I looked drained and needed to make more of an effort, conveniently ignoring that I was working 80 hours a week to fund his very existence. The house of cards collapsed on a random Tuesday. I had come home early from a shift because I had caught the flu. Mark was out of town on another vital networking retreat. Looking for some cold medicine in his home office desk, I knocked over a stack of mail. A bank statement from his business account slipped out. I shouldn't have opened it, but something in my gut screamed at me. I ripped the envelope open. The charges weren't for cloud servers, software developers, or marketing campaigns. They were for luxury boutiques, couples spa retreats, high-end jewelers, and a $5,000 monthly lease on a luxury apartment across town. My blood ran cold. I booted up his desktop computer. He had carelessly left his CloudSync app logged in. It took me less than 10 minutes to find the folder labeled personal. Inside were hundreds of photos of Mark with a 22-year-old girl named Chloe. To her, he wasn't a struggling entrepreneur scraping by on his wife's nursing salary. He was a wealthy, self-made CEO. He was using the money from my grandmother's house to play sugar daddy. But the true gut punch was an email thread with a high-profile divorce attorney. Mark was outlining a strategy to string me along just until the final lump sum of the mortgage equity cleared into the business account. Once that final transfer hits next month, he wrote to the lawyer, "I'm serving her. Make sure the LLC is completely walled off so she can't touch the company assets during the split." I sat in his office, shivering from a fever and a broken heart. I had sacrificed my health, my inheritance, and my youth for a parasite. He was planning to leave me completely destitute, homeless, and drowning in debt while he rode off into the sunset with his mistress. But as I stared at those emails, the heartbreak evaporated. It was instantly replaced by a cold, crystalline rage. Mark was exceptionally arrogant, but he was also incredibly sloppy. He had forgotten one crucial, foundational detail. When he first formed Apex Solutions, his credit was entirely ruined from past debts. He couldn't get a business bank account, a corporate line of credit, or a commercial lease. So, he had me sign the foundational paperwork. He told me I was just signing as a guarantor. I opened the state business registry database and pulled up the LLC documents. I wasn't just a guarantor. Legally, on paper, I was the 100% sole owner, founder, and CEO of the company. The money, the accounts, the corporate cards, the leased office space, none of it belonged to him. It all belonged to me. He was legally nothing more than an employee. I didn't cry. I didn't call him screaming. Instead, I picked up my phone and called a ruthless forensic accountant. Mark thought he had successfully played the long game. He had no idea the game was already over. For the next 3 weeks, I deserved an Academy Award for my performance. I kept playing the exhausted, devoted wife, making Mark his morning coffees and kissing him goodbye as he headed off to his office. Behind the scenes, I was a ghost operating with surgical precision. My forensic accountant combed through 3 years of bank statements, documenting every single embezzled dollar. The paper trail was so glaringly obvious that my lawyer practically drooled over it. Mark had been transferring the equity from my grandmother's house into the business account, and then directly filtering it out to pay for Chloe's luxury apartment lease, her designer bags, and their lavish vacations. Legally, since I was the 100% owner of Apex Solutions, Mark was just an employee committing massive corporate fraud against his own company. First, I secured my assets. The day the final lump sum of the remortgage cleared into the Apex Solutions corporate account, I walked into the bank with my incorporation documents and my ID. I legally froze Mark out of everything. I transferred every single cent into a new, secure account that only I could access. I canceled all the corporate credit cards. Then, I called the landlord of his rented downtown office space, proved my ownership, and canceled the lease, having the locks changed that very afternoon. Finally, as the legal CEO of Apex Solutions, I officially drafted a termination letter for Mark, citing gross misconduct and embezzlement, effectively firing him from the fake company he thought he built. The timing had to be poetic. Thanks to his synced calendar, I knew exactly where he was that Friday night. He was taking Chloe to a wildly exclusive Michelin-star restaurant downtown to celebrate her 22nd birthday. He had reserved the chef's tasting menu and pre-ordered a $4,000 bottle of vintage Bordeaux. It was the perfect stage. I didn't crash the dinner. I didn't want to make a hysterical scene. I wanted a flawless, humiliating execution. Instead, I paid a courier to coordinate directly with the restaurant's maitre, sliding him a generous tip to handle the delivery precisely when it mattered most. According to the courier who stayed to watch the fallout, it played out like a masterpiece. Mark and Chloe were laughing, holding hands across the white linen tablecloth, playing the roles of the wealthy tech mogul and his beautiful muse. When the sommelier brought out the vintage Bordeaux, Mark proudly handed over his sleek metal corporate credit card. 2 minutes later, the waiter returned. "I'm sorry, sir." It declined. Mark scoffed, playing it off as a bank error. He pulled out his secondary corporate card. Declined. Then his personal joint card. Declined. I had frozen everything that morning. Panic started to leak into his arrogant demeanor. Chloe looked confused, her smile faltering as the whispers from neighboring tables grew louder. That was when the mate d' approached. He wasn't holding the $4,000 wine. He was holding a polished silver platter. He set it gently on the table right in front of Mark. Sitting on the silver tray was a thick, legal-sized envelope. Mark ripped it open, his face draining of all color. Inside was his formal termination letter from Apex Solutions, demanding immediate repayment of the embezzled funds. Behind that was a formal eviction notice from my house, and at the very back, heavily highlighted, were the fast-tracked divorce filings with a complete printout of his emails to his lawyer, proving his premeditated financial abuse. "Mark, what is that?" Chloe asked, grabbing the papers before he could stop her. She read the first page, her eyes widening in horror as she realized her wealthy, single-tech genius boyfriend was actually a broke, married, unemployed fraud who was currently being sued by his own wife. She didn't scream. She just grabbed her Chanel purse, the one I technically paid for, and walked out of the restaurant without looking back, leaving him sitting there with a massive bill he couldn't pay. He called me 52 times that night. I didn't answer a single one. I was busy sitting on the porch of my grandmother's house, drinking a cheap glass of wine, enjoying the absolute silence. In less than 60 seconds, Mark lost his wife, his mistress, his fake wealth, and his dignity. He thought he could drain my life to fund his fantasy. Instead, I let him build his little glass castle. And then I took the sledgehammer and shattered it. And the best part? Every single thing I did was entirely legal.